Right, so I'm cleaning out this bin a bit because I've noticed it gets quite wet. It's been getting quite wet at the bottom there, and I also want to. It's sort of planting season, so I'm hoping to get some of this compost or worm castings for the seedlings. So I've sort of been sifting, and I've just noticed it's so wet that I'm gonna have to release the water. So yeah, I've not done this before, and I'm hoping that there's not that much pressure in there, and it's not just going to come shooting out this way. But if it does, I'm hoping this bucket will be enough to catch it. So wish me luck. Luckily Kay's upstairs, she's not. Okay, so luckily this still is working well. Yeah, geez, see how this goes, hey? Okay, so there's definitely water coming out. Let's take this all the way off. Oh, okay. So the water is draining. And let's hope that that all comes out. And that little reservoir, or in fact the whole bottom that's probably soaked, just drains out. And now people have said that you can actually use this worm bin water to fertilize a garden. And oh no, that's starting to stop. So what I might do is just tip the bucket forward. And the reason I'm not doing this outside is because it's freezing cold, and I don't particularly want to just sit around outside. Okay, so I'll see how this goes for now, and then I guess with this worm water I'll just sort of collect it and feed it to the plants eventually. Yeah. Well, he's a fast one, isn't he? So that one there, I believe, is one of the night crawlers that we got, because the night crawlers are generally bigger, and the red wigglers are thinner. So actually, in fact, I think this might be a red wiggler right there. Oh, where are you, buddy? Yeah, so generally smaller. I mean, it could just be a more juvenile night crawler, but I mean, I'm definitely not a worm expert. Hello? Jeez, where is his head? Oh, it's just bunched up. Yeah, so, this is the first time I've ever had a worm bin. And so I'm learning, and this is good. Learning on the job. So, yeah, I mean, I've pretty much dug out this half here. And as I claw away with the shovel, or whatever that is, I can see that there's worms that sort of are definitely in this whole wall of dirt here. So this whole half here is just full of the worms, and they've sort of evacuated this area as I've been digging through it. There's the odd one or two. Plus, with all the water that I've removed, not too many of them were down there really. Right, so what I'm going to do is continue sort of clawing away. I might just do it up to this about 2/3 of the way across. Make sure that these guys here are all happy. They've still got their old soil to dig through, and that's where most of the compost, obviously all the compost is as well, all the vegetable scraps. Yeah, I guess this is sort of a diagnosis, just to see how it's going, and to just get a bit more of that precious soil for the seedlings. I've actually separated. So, yeah, this here is actually all the stuff that didn't go through the sifter, purely because it's got stones in it. So this soil that I made this first bin with was actually from our front garden area, and that's quite rocky. I mean, it's really rocky. And oh, look at that! There's some worm eggs in there. Sorry, I think that's the first time I've ever seen that. So that there is the worm egg thing. There's that three. There's one there. There's one there, and I can see one more there. Now, so from what I've read, or what I've seen on YouTube and whatnot, is that within those, let me get it focusing, within those, there's thousands of worm eggs, of baby worms, and when that hatches, they'll just go and, carry on with their lives. Oh, there really are a lot of them, aren't there? Geez, I feel bad about sifting this soil now. Anyway, what was I saying? So, diagnosis, gonna clean this bin, gonna pack it so that it's not so wet at the bottom. I might put some sawdust in there, add a bit of carbon as well, or some paper. Put this other half back over, and in general, I'm just trying to get rid of this soil as well. This soil is bad to start with. It might be the stuff that's been sitting in the ground for a while, but next time I might just go buy a bag of just compost soil, or just regular soil from the store, because it's really hard to sift this soil when it's got these rocks in it. As for this pile of rocks, I'm going to probably wash some out. I'll wash them out, use the excess water as fertilizer, and the soil that's in there, and then just throw the rocks back into the front rock area. Or I could even take them to our garden for our rockery. Right, so I've covered a good 2-3 inches or so, or maybe 2 inches with the sawdust or the wood shavings, and then I'm just going to now move this back. I dare say when I do this, there's going to be a lot of worms that I'm going to upset, but let's have a look. Whoop. Sorry guys. Let's have a look here. Yeah, there they are. Oh geez. They haven't had a very good day today. It's been a lot of renovating. Hopefully they're happy. Now I've got a lot of these massive night crawlers. Maybe the red wigglers have sort of been eaten out of their home. But I kind of hoped, I just bought the 2 different kinds just in the hopes that they could get along, but maybe one is sort of doing better than the other. And supposedly I think the red wigglers can eat up to their same weight in vegetable scraps a day, which is amazing. But yeah, if they're not doing well, then what can you do? All right, I might just leave it on a bit of a slant there and just let them work their way down here. I may even add a few more sort of wood shavings on the top here just to make sure there's no moisture and extra carbon as well. All right, so that's all done. I've moved the dirt across, I've put some more wood shavings on top, and now I'll just let them relax for a few more weeks before I even bother them again, although I'll probably feed them sometime. Great, done. Now on to sifting through all this really wet compost. So yeah, too much water, and it's just impossible to sift. Plus, there's so many rocks. This is the worst composting material. Just getting soil from the garden. Plus, let's hope that there's a few worm castings in there too that have actually added to the wetness of that compost. But yeah, I dare say this stuff is probably more nutritious for the plants, has more beneficial bacteria and whatnot, is a better soil than the stuff you can buy from the store. So yeah, I think that's a success. Right, so after all that mess and sifting, I'm left with what I believe is relatively fertile soil. I don't obviously know if this is worm castings or not, or what percentage of this is worm castings, because it's just so wet, unfortunately. Oh, there's a worm. I should put that little guy back in the main worm bin. But yeah, obviously, I don't know what percentage of this is worm castings, but I'm hoping it's a lot more fertile than regular soil, and at least I've removed all the rocks as well, or most of the big rocks, which is great. Okay, so my idea is essentially to use these worm castings to start seedlings. We've got some lettuce here. Got some spring onion as well, and then we have some beans and some tomatoes, and also I saved some black Russian or some indigo blue tomato seeds from the community garden that we're members of in Tooting. So they're going to be the main crops, and then also one more I hope is to grow is the broccoli, the broccolini, sorry, because we eat a lot of broccolini, and that'd be good to have. So with these worm castings, I'm going to start the seeds, but the idea actually is I want to do a bit of an experiment. So what I'm going to do is I've got a lot of these seed starter trays. I'm going to fill up one or several with compost and the worm castings in a certain ratio, maybe like 50-50, maybe a little bit more, like 40-60, with the majority being the compost mix that I got from the store. And then one I'm just going to purely have as a compost mix, and I want to see how fast these things grow. So I'll put half of the, of each seed, or I'll split each seed packet into half. I'll put half in the one mix and half in the other mix, and we'll see how good this worm casting or this worm bin soil actually is for growing seeds. Yeah, hopefully there's a difference, but then hopefully as the plant matures, we can also see a difference further on in its life from the worm castings. And I might even continue to grow them in their special mixes, in their unique mixes of 40-60 or 100% compost throughout their whole life, just to make sure that worm castings are awesome. And if they're not, then what's the use in doing it, really? I mean, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of really great results from the worm castings, but if there's no difference to the store-bought compost, it's a lot of effort to go through. But in a way, it is good that we're sort of recycling our food waste. But yeah, it's a lot of effort. So hopefully, the plants with the worm castings or grown in the worm castings will be massive, and we'll see a big difference. So yeah, fingers crossed. And here we go. Right, so I've got some of this multi-purpose compost from the store. I'm not sure what the composition of this is. It might be peat moss, it might be other sort of stuff, or might even be regular soil. I guess we'll find out soon. So I'll crack this open, and I'm going to use this bucket here to mix together the worm castings in the soil. So I can see already that on the bag it actually says Goodwin Peat Industries, so I'm guessing it's peat. And yeah, it's got like the peat mixture, I guess that's what that is. And so it's got bits of bark in there. There's the soil, and then some fibrous material as well. Already I can see that this looks quite rich actually, and I'm sure it's really valuable. And there's also some, I think these are just green fertilizer as well. Green bits of fertilizer in there, slow release probably. But yeah, it's actually looking quite nice. I've bought store-bought compost before. I got some from Wilco's, and their brand seems to have like seems very fibrous and a lot of organic stuff, but it doesn't seem to have much soil, whereas this seems really rich in like sort of dark soil. And I can see that there's in the Wilco's variety, there's just like it's very homogeneous with the same kind of material in it. It's almost like little white fiberglass strands or some weird thing. I think that's just fertilizer, but in here it's looking like pretty good quality compost actually. So I'm quite liking that. It was a little bit more expensive. I actually got it from the local hardware store compared to Wilco's, just to see what the varieties would be. So yeah, I'll see how this goes. Ideally this should be actually pretty good for the seedlings just in of itself, but we'll see how we can supercharge that with the worm castings. Right, so I've now just added the 100% store-bought compost mix to these smaller seed trays. This is essentially half of the amount of seed trays that we have for the small trays, and we've also got a few here that I'll fill up soon. I'm now going to take these inside, and Kay is going to plant a seed into each, and then I'll repeat the process with the mix of the worm casting and compost. So we got these lettuce seeds here. It says to germinate them in March, so that is March, that is now, and then we can start to eat them around June, July. Lolo Rossa, Little Gem, Regina de Giashi, and May King. Wow, there's 4 different kinds in here. That's pretty cool. We'll see how they go. Doesn't look like 200. Sure it is though. Alright, so here's some more of the worm casting mix. I've already put in about 1 full spadeful, so this will be my last spadeful in here now. So that's basically turned out to be about 70% or maybe 60% store-bought compost and 40% worm casting compost. Now already I can see it's actually a lot more muddy. The whole mix in itself is a lot more muddy and sort of granular because of all these clumps of mud from the worm castings have essentially made their way into the mix, causing it to be like that. But I think it'll be alright. Obviously if it was more dry that'd be preferable, but have to make do for now. Okay, so that's all done. We've got 20 shallot seeds in a 100% store-bought compost and 20 shallot seeds in 60-40 store-bought and worm castings. And I've marked the worm castings one with this label and also this one. So these are, you can germinate these outside and the weather's pretty good. Hopefully won't get too much colder. But yeah, we have been getting some rainy days here in South London. Anyway, these will stay outside and we'll germinate those. The lettuce will germinate inside. I've also marked those with labels just to make sure that we know the different mixes and we can keep an eye on the experiment and see how it goes. Already I can see that there really is a difference between the consistency of the soil. You can obviously see here that there's a lot more of like a caking, or like a mud, like a more like clumps of mud in here, and that's all just the stuff that we got from the worm castings. Sorry, let the car go past. Now that's not a big problem because they're quite small, but I have seen effects where if you plant seeds into very muddy soil, what can happen is that the seedlings have a real hard time sort of coming up through that. So I hope that isn't to the seed's detriment. Yeah, so we'll see how they go. Here's another strange test as well with some tomatoes. These were given by Kay's brother, my brother-in-law, and they actually expire 2013. Yeah, sow date by 2013. So I've never sowed seeds that are this old. I'll be interested to see how they go. I think I was watching the MI Gardener channel and he actually he germinated seeds that were 87 years old, and those 87-year-old seeds were actually in seed packets that were hung behind a picture frame, and so that was like in an antique store that was picked up, and it was an heirloom variety called the Giant Crimson or something like that. And yeah, and so I watched his sort of a series of videos that have to do with the growing those, and it's amazing how he actually propagates them, because I think from the whole packet maybe like 2 or 3 ended up germinating, and they just took so long to germinate as well. And when they eventually germinated, he had a few that died, and eventually 1 or 2 actually became the plant that he grew, and then used the tomatoes from that to actually propagate like hundreds more. I think he actually sells the seeds now for quite a bit, or gives them away. I'm not sure. But yeah, MI Gardener, you have to check out that video or those series of videos because it's really interesting. Yeah, and now the world has the giant crimson tomato, and I've seen in this video he shows the full tomato. They're quite large, but they're so red. They're just really crimson and beautiful. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, I'm doing my part. 2013 seeds of probably extremely, I mean, Moneymaker, I think they're an extremely well-known brand, variety of tomato, but well, why not? Give it a go. All right, one more thing that's left to do today. We've planted the shallots, we've planted the lettuce or into the seedling containers, and lastly is to plant the tomatoes. Now I've got these just Moneymaker tomatoes that were given to me from Kay's brother. So I'll plant a few of these, but what I've really been anticipating for pretty much a whole year, it's quite silly, but these seeds are what Kay and I harvested from a few tomatoes that were grown in the Tooting Community Garden at Transition Town, Tooting. The tomato species, the variety, I'm not sure if it's called Indigo Rose or Russian or Black Russians, but either way they look very much alike. But they were some of the most delicious tomatoes that I've ever eaten. Just fresh off the tree, they beat the ones that we grew out in our yard, and I definitely think it was down to the variety. So we had Tigerella, Gardener's Delight, and cherry tomatoes, and they were all great. But these ones here, these Black Russian or Indigo Rose, not sure which one kind, they had a really nice texture, not too sort of juicy, not too wet, and not too dry, and not too grainy either, but they were really nice to bite into. Thin skin, didn't stick in your teeth, and the taste was sweet and just had that really strong sort of nice tomato taste. So yeah, I was really happy to grab a few of those tomatoes and get the seeds out of them. And so now, because it's season again, I'm going to try grow my own. I might even give some back to the garden again. So, all right, I've got a seed tray here with about 20 holes in it, 20 spaces. So I'm going to probably go 2 per space. I think I've got about 300, 400 seeds here. So probably go 2 per space. I promised some to the lady down the road. She gave us the strawberry plants and just chats to us about our garden. So I told her about these black tomatoes and said she's got to try to grow them. So yeah, we'll give it a go. I'll plant them now.